These are artists who earn more money in a single year than most of us could even dream of in a lifetime. They've got the hit records, the sold-out tours, the global fame, the whole shebang. So how in the world do they end up completely broke? We're going to dive into the fascinating and honestly kind of scary stories of some of music's biggest icons who had it all and then lost it.
Right? It's the question that just doesn't seem to make any sense. Is it just a string of bad luck, terrible advice, or is there something deeper going on? We're going to look at 4 legendary artists who took 4 wildly different paths that all somehow ended up in the same place. Total financial disaster.
First up, you gotta start with the man who basically defined the early 90s. His energy was infectious, but you know what was even more infectious? His spending habits. We're talking about MC Hammer. His story is the absolute textbook example of what happens when your lifestyle starts to outrun even a gigantic fortune.
Next, the brilliant, the iconic Lauryn Hill. She releases one of the most celebrated albums of all time, a true masterpiece. And then she pulls back from the public eye. And this decision leads to a major clash between her own personal ideals and the cold, hard reality of the tax system.
Then we've got the beloved country outlaw himself, Willie Nelson. A guy who's famous for being generous, super laid back, but maybe a little too trusting. He handed over the keys to his financial kingdom, and that trust put him on a collision course with the IRS.
And finally, the best-selling tropical salsa artist of all time, Marc Anthony. This is a global superstar who, by his own account, was completely and utterly blindsided when the government showed up asking for millions and millions of dollars in unpaid taxes.
So, you have to ask, how did it all go so wrong for them? Let's dig into the specific mistakes that turned these incredible fortunes into just massive, crushing liabilities. Okay, so what's so fascinating here is that all these complex, dramatic stories really boil down to one of 2 huge mistakes. On one side, you've got the spender, the person who just can't stop the cash from flowing out. And on the other, you have the overtruster, the artist who just takes a step back and assumes someone else is handling it all. No questions asked.
And MC Hammer is the ultimate poster child for the spender. Get this. At his peak, he was pulling in an estimated $33 million a year. But it wasn't just about buying stuff. He had a 200-person entourage that cost him $500,000 a month just in payroll. Add in a $12 million mansion, a jet, 21 racehorses. The burn rate was just astronomical. It was all fueled by this pressure to keep up that larger-than-life image, and it didn't take long for it to completely swallow his income and put him $13 million in debt.
Now let's flip over to the overtruster side of things with Willie Nelson. His money managers got him involved in something called a tax shelter. Now, in theory, this is supposed to be a perfectly legal way to lower your tax bill. But here's the catch, and it is a huge catch. It has to be connected to a real business that's actually trying to make money.
And boom, there it is, straight from the IRS. This quote just cuts right to the chase. The problem was the investments Willie was in were claiming fake losses. They had no real business purpose, or economic substance, as the IRS calls it. He had put his complete faith in his advisors, and they walked him straight into an illegal scheme. And you start to see the common thread here, right? It's this disconnect from the day-to-day details of their own money. Lauryn Hill, she consciously chose to step away from the music industry machine to raise her family, but that created a massive blind spot when it came to her finances. And Marc Anthony's story shows a different kind of trust. He put his own brother in charge of his business affairs, proving that even with family, if you're not paying attention, things can go sideways fast.
Now, in her court case, Lauryn Hill said this, and it's a really powerful and, pretty controversial statement. She basically argued that her not paying taxes wasn't just an oversight, it was a form of protest against a financial system she felt was fundamentally unfair. And that, as you can imagine, sparked a huge public debate.
So this all leads us to the inevitable part of the story. Because it doesn't matter why it happened, whether it's overspending, bad advice, or even protest, sooner or later the bill always comes due. And when the IRS comes knocking, things get serious fast.
For Willie Nelson, the first number the IRS threw at him was $32 million. Just let that sink in for a second. And the craziest part, the vast majority of that wasn't even the original tax he owed. It was from years and years of brutal penalties and interest piling up.
Meanwhile, MC Hammer, with that unbelievable spending, had dug himself into a hole so deep that he was facing about $13 million in debt. That's what finally forced him to file for bankruptcy.
And for Marc Anthony, the government got very direct. They put a tax lien,
which is basically a legal claim, on his home for $3.4 million. That means his own house was on the line until he could settle up.
See, the fallout here is just devastating. The IRS didn't just send Willie a bill. They seized almost everything he owned, his ranch, his homes, even the master tapes of his music. Hammer had to go bankrupt, Anthony had to pay out millions, and Lauryn Hill, well, she ended up losing her freedom, sentenced to 3 months of home confinement.
Okay, this is all pretty heavy stuff, I know, but there are some seriously powerful lessons hiding in these stories. So the big question is, what can we, artists or not, actually learn from these million-dollar mistakes?
First, we got to talk about this because it's a moment of pure genius. Staring down this massive debt, what does Willie Nelson do? He actually partners with the IRS. He puts out this double album and he cheekily calls it the IRS Tapes, Who'll Buy My Memories, with a chunk of the sales going straight to the government. It is just a brilliant, brilliant way to turn a disaster into a solution.
So what are the big takeaways from all of this? Well, if you put all their stories together, you get a pretty clear roadmap for what not to do. Number 1, stay involved. Even if you have a whole team, it's your money. At the end of the day, it's your responsibility. 2, vet your advisors. Don't just trust someone because they seem nice. Check their credentials. 3, plan for taxes. They aren't a surprise party. They happen every year. And 4, this is a big one. Keep some cash ready. All of Willie Nelson's wealth was tied up in things, which is why the IRS could just take it all. Which brings us to this final, really important question. Is it all on the artist to figure this out on their own? Or does an industry that makes billions and billions of dollars off their talent have some kind of responsibility to teach financial literacy and maybe protect the people who are creating all that wealth in the first place? It's a complicated question, and there are no easy answers. Thanks for tuning in.